Her child was fading, skin cold as death, eyes hollow like something had crawled inside and taken her place. But Sena knew this was no ordinary sickness. It all began with a single mistake. She carved a doll from a dead woman's bones, and now that dead woman wants her child back. They say a woman's yearning for a child is like the harmattan wind, persistent, relentless, and sometimes blinding. So, when Sena realized she could not conceive, she felt the desert dust choking her spirit. She tried every herbal tonic, every blessing from the village elders, but her womb remained silent, and the weight of her in-laws' scorn pressed heavier on her heart each day.
Hey, Sena,
Her neighbor Maggie whispered one morning.
I hear there is a way, a forbidden rite if you are desperate enough.
Maggie's eyes darted around as though the wind carried secrets she feared might be overheard.
They say it's bound to the bones of Nana Sewa, the midwife feared by all.
She glanced around, worried the very shadows might overhear.
People say she used dark arts to help women conceive, but
Sena recoiled, pressing a hand to her chest.
Kai, do you think me so foolish to meddle with that old witch's remains? I am not that desperate.
She snapped. Maggie replied,
sometimes what the living won't give, the dead might.
Sena scoffed, determined to cling to pride. But that night, as she lay awake beside her sleeping husband, she recalled each miscarriage, each sorrowful gaze from the women at the riverbank. Her resolve weakened, and she rose before dawn to find the old caretaker of the abandoned shrine, rumored to guard Nana Sewa's bones. By the edge of a mossy shrine, Sena found a hunched figure draped in tattered cloth. The caretaker's eyes glowed in the lantern light, and his voice rasped like a broom on cracked stone.
So you've come to claim the midwife's bones?
He shook his head slowly.
These bones are cursed, my child.
Sena's breath shuddered.
If these bones can help me conceive, I will face any consequence. My womb is empty. My life is hollow.
In the shadowed corner of the shrine, the caretaker pointed to a crumbling clay pot. The
Midwife's bones?
He rasped.
That woman, Nana Sewa, helped many, but she was also feared for her dark arts. They say she swore to bear a child by any means.
Sena's heart thundered in her chest.
How did she die?
He shrugged with a grim smile.
Some say the spirits themselves silenced her. Others claim she paid the ultimate price for meddling with life and death.
He handed Sena the pot.
If you do this, you must be prepared to face the consequences. A barren womb can become fruitful, yes, but the dead never give without taking. Remember, you must pay your debt in blood or in sorrow.
He handed Sena a small clay pot, sealed with dripping candle wax. She felt a chill that seemed to reach beneath her skin. She considered his warning, but her longing for a child overpowered her caution. So she clutched the pot tight and slipped away, ignoring the dread settling in her stomach. That night, Sena lit a single lantern in her cramped storeroom, ensuring no curious eyes could spy on her. She pried open the clay pot and recoiled at the stale stench of old bones. Nana Sewa's remains. A wave of revulsion coursed through Sena, but her desperation pulsed more strongly. She laid out her tools, a small chisel, a knife, and a cloth to stifle the clatter. With trembling hands, she began to carve. Sparks of bone dust curled in the lantern's glow, and every scrape against the remains made Sena's teeth clench.
Spirits,
She whispered.
I only seek a child.
She recalled the caretaker's warning. You must pay your debt in blood. So after the Akua'ba doll took shape, its round head and slender torso carved from white bone, Sena pricked her finger with the tip of the knife. Sena's voice trembled.
Nana Sewa, if your spirit is here, grant me a child and I shall honor you.
Blood dripped onto the doll's carved mouth. At once, a shiver rippled through the air, extinguishing her lantern. Darkness descended. Yet, even as her heart hammered in her chest, she felt relief. She believed the ritual had been accepted, and soon, the child she yearned for would be hers. Yet she felt something shift in the air, like a stirring presence watching from the blackness. Within a single moon cycle, Sena knew something was different. She did not bleed at her monthly time, and her belly felt oddly warm. When she finally told her husband, he erupted in laughter and tears, rushing to tell his mother. The old woman who had once scorned Sena placed a protective charm around her neck and exclaimed,
The ancestors have smiled on us at last.
The village women, who once kept their distance, approached her now with cautious congrats. Sena accepted their words with a smile, but inside, her conscience smoldered with guilt, for she alone knew how this blessing had come about. Yet even as the child in her womb grew stronger, something else tugged at Sena's mind. She dreamed of distant drums at night and glimpsed fleeting shapes skulking near the windows, and they all seemed to stem from the bone Akua'ba. She wrapped it in old cloth and discarded it in a corner near her sleeping mat, hoping distance might blunt its eerie power. But then, the Akua'ba doll seemed to shift positions whenever she blinked. Sena refused to dwell on it. She told herself it was only her imagination. She had a daughter to bring into the world. She had no room for fear. Sena delivered a healthy daughter under the watchful guidance of the village's current midwife, an older woman who once assisted the fearsome midwife and whose hands trembled whenever someone mentioned Nana Sewa's name. The baby's cry filled the hut and tears streamed down Sena's cheeks. Sena named her child Naya, meaning gift in the old tongue. Her husband kissed her brow, tears in his eyes.
Finally, our prayers are answered.
For a week, the house brimmed with celebration. Families arrived bearing yams, spices, and cloth for the newborn. Drummers pounded out rhythms in the courtyard until the moon climbed high. Sena felt an unearthly joy, but as she cradled Naya that night, she sensed the Akua'ba's cold gaze from across the room. She locked it in a small chest near her sleeping mat, unwilling to let its silent stare ruin her happiness. But the next night, a strange chill drifted through her room, making the candles flicker. She got up to check the chest to be sure the doll was still there. She froze. The chest stood wide open. The bone Akua'ba lay on top of the lid, facing Naya's cradle. Sena's stomach lurched. She seized the doll and jammed it back into the trunk, muttering,
Get away from my daughter.
But as dawn broke, she found it perched beside the cradle again, its hollow gaze fixed on the child. She snatched it away in alarm.
Fie! This is nonsense.
She hissed, tossing it into a locked chest. She convinced herself everything would be fine, but deep down, she knew. That very night, Naya woke up screaming, her tiny voice trembling with terror. Sena rushed to her side, but froze upon hearing a raspy whisper echoing in the darkness, an old lullaby that no one in the household knew. The next morning, Naya seemed weak, her eyes distant. She barely ate and stared at shadows on the wall. Over the next few days, Naya's bright coos turned into strained whimpers. Her plump cheeks grew pale, and dark rings formed under her tiny eyes. She developed a rattling cough at night, choking on the hush of unseen forces. Sena felt panic claw at her throat, but she couldn't bring herself to destroy the doll that had helped her conceive. Sena's husband demanded,
What is happening to her?
but she had no words to explain. She only knew the bond she'd forged with Nana Sewa's bones was claiming her daughter. She sought out the only person who she felt could understand the gravity of the entire situation. The person who had brought her child into the world and served as an assistant to Nana Sewa, the village midwife. The midwife, hunched over a bowl of pungent herbs, spat on the ground when Sena told her tale.
Bebri, you made a pact with Nana Sewa's spirit. Nana Sewa boasted she'd never die childless. Even if it meant claiming the womb of another, you offered her bones, your blood. So the spirit came to life within that Akua'ba. If you do not break it, that poor child will be lost.
Sena's voice trembled.
What can I do? Naya weakens every day.
The midwife drew a shaky breath.
A ritual of release can break the pact, but it demands sacrifice. You must return blood to the bones, this time with the purest love in your heart, not desperation. Are you prepared to risk everything, Sena?
Sena clenched her fists in desperation. Thunderclouds gathered over the village. The wind carried the scent of rain, but something else lingered beneath it. Fear. Sena returned home to find Naya crying in a strange, hollow tone. The child's voice wavered between her own and something older, darker. Sena knew time was running out. Sena cradled Naya, her child feverish and barely conscious.
Naya, forgive me,
she whispered, kissing the clammy brow. She gathered a lantern, a calabash of palm oil, black candles, and carried the locked chest containing the Akua'ba doll, still tainted with specks of her dried blood, to the deserted shrine where she had once dared to meddle with the dead. Lightning flickered across the sky, revealing the shrine's broken walls. Rain lashed the earth, but Sena pressed forward with Naya bundled against her chest. She set up the items in a circle of chalk and placed Naya at its center, hoping the child would survive just a while longer. Each thunderclap rattled the crumbling roof, as though the ancestors themselves were bearing witness. A low voice hissed through Naya's lips, although the infant's eyes had rolled back.
Sena,
it murmured.
You cannot forsake our bargain.
The words twisted with an ancient accent, one that sent a chill racing through Sena's veins. The child wailed, eyes rolling back even more. A low voice seeped from her throat, Nana Sewa's voice.
You promised me a child, Sena. You gave me your blood.
The doll in the chest began knocking, a frantic thud, thud, thud. Sena flung it open and the Akua'ba tumbled out, cracking as it struck the floor. The air turned ice cold.
Nana Sewa,
Sena shouted into the wind.
I am here to end this.
A shrill laugh seemed to echo off the crumbling walls. Sena remembered the midwife's instructions. You must return blood to the bones. Sena raised a knife to her palm.
Take me if you must,
she whispered, slicing deep. Blood oozed, pooling in her cupped hand. She held it above the doll's carved mouth.
But I beg you.
Tears streaked Sena's face.
Leave my daughter alone.
Blood dripped into the circle. Naya shrieked, and the doll's hollow eyes glowed with a sickly green light. A windstorm erupted within the shrine, rattling the walls as if the ancestors themselves roared in fury. Naya's body went limp, and for a moment, Sena feared she'd lost her child entirely. But the black wisp seeped out from Naya's form, spiraling toward the bone Akua'ba. Sena held her bleeding hand over the Akua'ba, letting her blood wash over the carved bone. She summoned all her will and screamed,
Nana Sewa, I release you from my blood. Leave us. By the power of those who protect the living, go back to your rest.
With a deafening shriek, the spirit was sucked into the doll. The bone split with a thunderous crack. Its pieces fell to the ground, smoldering in a faint, greenish glow. Silence reigned. Sena rushed to Naya's side, pressing her ear against the baby's chest. A weak heartbeat fluttered. The child's eyes fluttered open, color returning to her cheeks. Sena sobbed, cradling her daughter as rain hissed in through the shattered roof. All that remained of the Akua'ba was a fractured shell, its eerie shine extinguished. At dawn, when the villagers came searching for Sena and the child, they found her exhausted and trembling, but alive. The charred remains of the Akua'ba lay on the ground, its hollow sockets staring into oblivion. Many turned away in horror, whispering,
Witchcraft.
And
Nana Sewa's curse.
Yet none dared confront Sena or take the child from her arms. In the days that followed, Naya regained her strength, a healthy glow blossoming on her cheeks once more. Sena, however, found a streak of white in her dark hair and a deep ache in her bones. She felt weaker, as though a piece of her life force had been torn away. But her daughter was safe. Neighbors who offered idle gossip were met with a haunted gaze that made them think twice. She spoke little of her ordeal, but the wise ones in the village understood what had happened. They saw in her eyes the sacrifice of a mother who defied death itself. Some murmured that the spirit of Nana Sewa might still linger, waiting for another vulnerable soul to claim. Others believed that Sena's courage had banished the midwife forever. But one thing was certain, the dead do not part with life lightly. And in that quiet West African village, there would forever be whispers about the woman who carved a bone Akua'ba from a dreaded midwife's remains and almost lost her soul to save her child. Sena paid the price. She tampered with forces beyond her understanding and almost lost everything. But tell me, would you have done the same? If you were desperate, if the world turned its back on you, if your prayers went unanswered, how far would you go to get what you want? Would you risk a debt with the dead? Drop your thoughts in the comments, but beware, some deals can't be undone.